Hi, I'm Matthew Whitehead from Natural Resources Wales. I'm going to be discussing today contractor competency and give you an example of a pilot that I was involved in with my time at Pontralis Harvesting Limited, where I worked closely with a number of contractors. Today I'm going to focus on four key aspects. I'm going to look at contractor competencies, systems we trialed for recording, example of contractor competency. So this is covering aspects like health and safety law, contractor risk assessment and site activities. And then the outcomes, the kind of lessons we learned both from a forest works manager's perspective and a contractor's perspective. To identify what we thought contractor competency was, we referred to the guidance managing health and safety in forestry, where we were able to identify a couple of key aspects that we needed to apply. We needed to ensure that health and safety standards were met. We selected operators who were skilled, experienced and competent. We ensured that the contractor was managing his employees, ensured that the contractor had effective supervision, ensured that they had a process within the company to report any unsafe practices or occurrences, and ensure that we had a process to record the future competence and experience of the operators as they developed over the years. So the first aspect we looked at was health and safety law. We knew there were multiple regulations that we needed to ensure the contractor complied with to ensure he was delivering his employer responsibility and ensuring that his operators or employees were aware of the risks associated to their work. So this list shown on the screen shows an idea of the different regulations that we considered when we were going through this process. So the first task that we undertook was looking at the relevant policies, procedures and risk assessments that related to the activities and the regulations that applied to the contractor's activities. So from this, we were able to develop a number of documents to support the contractor in delivering those requirements under the regulations. For example, health and safety policies, have assessments, have poster to go into the welfare unit, risk assessments, manual handling risk assessments, work at height risk assessments. So once we've established the policies and procedures, we need to ensure that this was implemented on the worksite. So helping the contractor, we were able to set up different control measures on the site, as shown as on the examples on the left. So this could be, for example, simple zip ties identifying the vibration level in a chainsaw, or policies and procedures clearly identified within the welfare unit. The next stage was identifying a clear process for managing the risk assessment at its key stages. This shown on the right hand side in the flow diagram. As you can see in the section in red, we've identified that there's four aspects that apply to the contractor. The general risk assessment, the site-specific risk assessment, the site induction, and toolbox talks, also known as task assessments. The general risk assessment covers the general hazards and risks and control measures that will be applicable to the worksite activities that the contractor will undertake. For example, machinery, operational or chainsaw activities. This is normally reviewed on an annual basis or where a significant change occurs on the worksite. The site-specific risk assessment covers the key points relating to that specific worksite. For example, site details, the relevant FISA guides, procedures for unloading and loading of machines, a process for managing site visitors, identifying key risks relating to the worksite and referencing them back to the general risk assessment as shown on the right. For example, fire would identify the control measures within the general risk assessment that would be applicable. Also, a critical part was ensuring that the operators agreed to the risk assessment following review and the risk assessment was signed by all operators. Another aspect to consider is to ensure that there's no conflict between the Forest Works Manager's risk assessment and the contractor risk assessment. Once activities commence on a daily basis or on each change of activity, a task risk assessment was completed. This would cover the specific task for that workday or that work activity and would ensure to cover the relevant risks, constraints, weather conditions, and other constraints or controls required for that activity that would be reviewed with all operators present and then signed to agree that that was the agreed work plan and control measures that were going to be implemented for those activities. Another aspect that we wish to record was operator competencies. This was recorded in 4 ways. Relevant certificates were uploaded into the app with the relevant kind of validation dates. Any FISA refresher or first aid was noted. An initial CV for each operator was developed and recorded within the app, identifying what their work history was and the activities they'd previously built experience in. For example, a chainsaw operator could record that he'd been working in multiple windblow trees on a specific site, for example. Additionally, part of this evidence of competency, we encouraged operators to record their involvement within the planning of the task assessments and ensuring that they log them within their competency record, attendance to toolbox talks with the Forest Works manager or contractor as part of their CPD, or even inspection records of machines to show that they were competent to do so. Any new operators starting with the contractor needed to understand the work environment that they were coming into. So an operator induction form was created. This had links to safety videos developed by FLS and FCGB. It also allowed the opportunity for the contractor and the Forest Works manager to explain the risk assessments, both outline and site-specific and general, and also an opportunity for the contractor to share information in relation to the company, i.e. company rules, policies and procedures, and brief the operator. On final review, the operator, Forest Works manager and contractor would sign to confirm the operator was safe to start works. When managing the site activities once the site has gone live, there were multiple aspects that we would want to cover. So involvement in the PCM process by the contractor, site induction for any new operators coming on to that work site, and ensuring they're briefed on the relevant documentation and agree and sign to confirm that they will follow it. Have a clear process for managing site visitors when they attend the work site, whether this is mechanics or fuel delivery lorries, and ensure that they're aware of the risk zones applicable and any basic site safety rules. Alongside this, it was further supported by the development of toolbox talks and daily briefings. The pilot tested 4 different methods for recording information. The initial was paper, which was very onerous on both the contractor and the operators. We then looked at applications. 2 of the applications, Nest Forms and iAuditor, were good tools for recording information, but were limited in sharing information with the operator. The final app that we decided to test was the Safe Forestry app. This was a really good tool in sharing information with the operator, whether this was a live map showing the constraints on the work site, the ability to record a CV within the app and hold copies of certification and other relevant paperwork to that work site, or simple offline mode to record information when out of signal. Finally, the conclusions to the pilot was 4 different aspects that needed to be considered. Time. This took a lot of time for both the contractor, the operators and the Forest Works manager to set up and embed within the company. And anyone considering this should consider as a long-term step in that direction. It will take time for the implementation of the forms, etc. But then also this has an impact on cost. This does cost the contractor and needs to be considered within the working costs of the site. The contractor will have to delegate time for the operators to complete their logbooks, complete the forms in the morning and do the task assessments. Additionally, the one thing we noted was that the Forest Works manager's support is critical. Ensuring that the Forest Works manager supports the contractor at all points is essential to the success of this. Ensuring that they provide that knowledge and experience that they can share with the contractor in relation to health and safety law and the relevant kind of aspects relating to that. And finally, the biggest subject which come up on multiple occasions was detail. We had to set our expectations a lot more simpler for the operators. We have to be aware that operators will not have the same abilities as a forest works manager in the way that they write information and record their experiences, for example, and that we have to expect that this will be simple at the start, and with continuous support from both the forest works manager and the contractor, the information they capture will improve with time. But the biggest and the most successful benefit to supporting this is the ability to take photos. The more photos you can take of the activities, the better the picture you can paint. And this is something that was very successful with the operators.